Well, what's the difference between a Lifesaver storm shelter and a Refuge storm shelter? And to be honest, they're very comparable shelters. They're very similar. You know, they both exceed or meet FEMA guidelines, except for the mini Refuge, of course, which you've got the different alternating steps. That's the only reason. It's the only thing that FEMA did not like for whatever reason. So other than that, they all exceed FEMA guidelines. They're all tested, impact tested by the Texas Tech University Wind Science Center to withstand debris impact from an F5 tornado. So they're all very good, safe shelters. The main difference you can see, obviously, the Refuge is white, the Lifesaver is green. Here, the Refuge, you've got the lock right here with the key. You can lock it just like that with the Refuge from the outside. Whereas the Lifesaver, when you shut it down, the way that the gasket or the gas strut is designed, it's going to hold the door shut. Now, of course, a big wind can come by and lift the door open, but you have you can lock them from the bottom using that locking system that I discussed in other videos. So that's one of the main points. But they both have the 3-point locking system, again, a FEMA guideline standard, locking there and there and there. Both have a quarter-turn locking hinge. Most of the Lifesavers are going to open from the back to the front, whereas the Refuge is going to open from the side to the side. They both have the rubber gasket seals to keep the water out. Again, the main difference between the Refuge is the 12-person we're looking at right here. Slant. And you can come over here from the side and take a look, but this is basically going to be the level of your ground. Okay, it's going to be the dirt level is going to be to right about here. Okay, so as you can kind of see, it goes up at a slant. It goes up at an angle. So we're actually going to have to build up a little bit of a mound right here to compensate for this lid being at a slope. Again, if you zoom out a little bit, you'll be able to kind of see that this is level with the ground, and it does come up at a slight angle. Another main difference between the Refuge is the size of the door. As we measured in previous videos, you'll be able to see that the Refuge shelter is the larger one is actually about the same width as the Lifesaver shelter door. However, it's about a foot taller. So the Lifesaver door would end about right here, and the Refuge door is going to be about a foot more. That just makes it easier to get in and out of the Refuge storm shelter. The other main difference you're going to see here too is the width of the steps. On the Refuge or the Refuge stairs, as you can see here, they're not quite as short of steps, and because you have that incline, you do have a mound, but with that mound, it gives you a little bit easier access because you have one less step. So it makes getting into and out of a shelter much easier with the Refuge, but you do have the mound. So that's going to be the main difference between the Refuge 12 and the Lifesaver 12 person shelter. And you can actually see that the Refuge is probably a little bit bigger than the Lifesaver 12. You can probably fit 12 to 15 people very comfortably here in the Refuge. Now the Lifesaver, you could probably also fit 12 people very comfortably, but I think you could probably squeeze a few more people into the Refuge than you could the Lifesaver. Now, if a really bad storm was coming through, could you fit more than 15 people in the Lifesaver? Yeah, both of them you could probably fit 20 if you had to. But I think if you're trying to get the max amount of people in, the Refuge here, the 12 person, would be more and better than the Lifesaver 12. Now the Lifesaver does have a bigger shelter though. We do have a 20 person Lifesaver, so you could get more people, of course, in the 20 person Lifesaver than you could the 12 Refuge. So those are going to be your main differences. Again, also on the inside, you might be able to see here if the camera can zoom in, but you actually have a little place here for some shelving where you can put you can have some water or food supplies. You can put a lantern, some batteries, some games for the kids maybe. So you have a little bit more space here in the Refuge 12 person, and I believe the benches are actually a little bit deeper as well, so a little bit more space that way. So that's going to be your main differences between your Lifesaver and your Refuge. Again, other than that, the height's going to be a little bit taller in here. It's about 6 inches taller on the Refuge than it is with the Lifesaver. So a little bit easier to access, a little bit taller on the inside, but you do have the hump. It's going to be the main differences between the Refuge. And of course, the color is white versus a green on the outside. Both of them have a brilliant white gel coat. Here we are, we're at the R6, what I call it. It's called the Mini Refuge Storm Shelter, underground fiberglass storm shelter. Again, I want to talk about some of the differences and the comparisons between a Refuge 6-person shelter and a Lifesaver 6-person shelter. So, again, the Lifesavers are all very similar. They all have the flat lids. They're all green. The main difference is just the height is a little bit taller in some of the bigger Lifesavers than the smaller Lifesavers. Installation method is a little bit different in the bigger shelters, and you just have a little bit, obviously, different size. Other than that, they're all virtually the same with the Lifesaver. The Refuge, each of the 3 models is a little bit different, but there are only 3 models of Refuge. There are 6 models of Lifesaver. Lifesaver goes from an LS4, so a 4 adult, to as large as a 20 adult. The Refuge only has 3 sizes. It has a 6, an 8, and a 12. Okay? As we discussed before, the Refuge 12 can actually be a 12 or a 15. So, here's the 6-person, it's the mini Refuge, and we're going to talk about some of the differences between the mini Refuge 6-person shelter and the Lifesaver 6-person shelter, the LS6. Again, one of the main components, again, it's going to be different, is you're going to have the locking door on the outside of the mini Refuge. So, just a quarter turn, and it's sealed and locked shut. You can use a key to keep it locked, keep kids out, things like that, just don't lose the key. But then when you want to open it, all you got to do is quarter turn, and it lifts on its own. Also, one thing to keep in mind, the Lifesaver, of course, is not going to have this kind of a locking system. It does not come with the locking system, but all of them but the 10 and the 20 are going to have a pipe here on the bottom where you can actually thread like a bicycle lock or a chain through, and it's going to have a handle right here where you lift the lid, because again, the Lifesaver is going to lift most of the time from the front to the back. They do have a couple that will actually open from the side, but generally they build them with the door opening this way. So that's going to be, again, one of your main differences. The door is going to be about a little bit taller here on the mini Refuge than on the Lifesaver. The Lifesaver may be a little bit wider door. This door is actually a little bit narrower than the larger Refuge models. The biggest difference with the mini Refuge, it has the flat lid just like the Lifesaver, but the main difference is going to be the alternating steps, as you can kind of see, so that there's less steps because of the incline, that you kind of have to alternate your way down the stairs. FEMA didn't like that so much, so that's the only reason why it did not pass all FEMA guidelines. That's the one thing FEMA does not like about it. Other than that, it meets all other FEMA guidelines. But you can see real clearly here about the venting system. This is also different from the Lifesaver. The Refuge has got these 2 here. They're basically pipes that will stick out of the ground once installed. The dirt level will be just over the top of them. You'll have pipes coming out. The Lifesaver, again, had the vents on the sides, right in the very top of the lid. And so they're a little bit less visible, but again, it's just a different way of doing it. They both meet FEMA guidelines. It's just one is a little different than the other. Also, the mini Refuge here as well, it has a little different, it's got more of a round structure to it, whereas the Lifesaver has more of a longer rectangular structure to it. Of course, the Refuge is going to have flat steps, not going to have the alternating steps, but they both hold for 6 people, and they're both very similar in size. I think the Refuge may be a couple inches taller on the inside, but again, they're both designed to hold 6 people. They're both impact tested to withstand an F5 tornado, and they both meet FEMA guidelines, except for the alternating stairs here in the Refuge. One other thing to keep in mind, all of the Refuge shelters, as far as pricing is concerned, are $200 more than the Lifesaver equivalent size shelter. The main reason for that is because they're coming out of Texas instead of Illinois, so it's a little bit more of a shipping cost to get it here to Huntsville so we can install it for you. So just add $200 to the price of Lifesaver for the equivalent model, and you can get the Refuges quite a bit quicker. The Refuge we're able to get in a matter of weeks, whereas the Lifesaver at some points can be as many as 90 days out. It really kind of depends on the season and the time of year and when you're watching this video. We may have them available for you right away, or if it's in the middle of the storm season, we could be, like I said, 90 days backed up or more. That's going to be your main differences. All the Refuges pretty much install very similar. They have a pipe system that goes underneath the shelter, and then we put the blocks on both sides and backfill the dirt. You've got the flat lid like we talked about earlier. The 12-person's got the slope lid here. One other thing about the 12-person that I forgot to discuss earlier was the venting system. Again, you have the vents on the very top, just like you have with the mini Refuge. And again, the Lifesaver is going to have the lids, or the vents underneath. You're going to have 2 vents on both sides on the Lifesaver 12 that are covered by the lid. So just different venting system, slightly different angle here on that one. This one, again, is going to be $200 more than the Lifesaver 12. And those are going to be your main comparisons, your main differences between the Lifesaver Storm Shelter and the Refuge Storm Shelter. Okay, here we are again. This is the Refuge 2. I call it the R8, which is basically the 8-person Refuge Storm Shelter. Again, I'm going to show the comparison, the differences between the Lifesaver Storm Shelter for underground installation and the Refuge underground storm shelter. Again, we talked about the differences between all the Refuge and the Lifesaver. They're all going to have this difference in the locking system. The Lifesaver does not have a built-in locking system. You can lock it by using a bicycle lock or a chain down here at the bottom, as we talked about, and I'll show you again later in this video. You've got a quarter-turn lock, and it opens the door. It opens right up. They both have the gaskets to seal, keep all the water out. You're going to have a venting system on the Lifesaver. Is going to be inside the very top of the access here with screen vents. The difference is here, those vents are going to be on top of the Refuge. Toward the back of the shelter, you're going to come out with pipes basically sticking out on top. The other main difference you can see is very obvious in this shelter is the length of this door. You can see it's a little bit more narrow than the Lifesaver, but you can see because the door opens sideways that it's a lot longer, and that means that your head's not going to, you don't have to duck to try and get in here. It's very easy to get in and out of this storm shelter when it's obviously on its side. Now, as we talked about, the Refuge 12 has a little bit of a slant to it in the door. This is going to be a flat lid, just like the Lifesaver. So again, very equivalent shelter to the Lifesaver. Generally, we can get the Refuges in a whole lot faster than we can the Lifesaver. They have a bigger production than the Lifesaver does, so we can get these a lot faster before you get them installed. This is going to be starting at $200 more for a Refuge storm shelter than a Lifesaver, because again, the distance to Texas is a lot farther, a little bit further than it is to get to Illinois, which is where the Lifesaver is made. Again, you look down here at the steps, you can kind of see they're good-sized steps. They don't have the alternating like they do with the smaller Refuge. They are proper steps all the way down. Quite a few steps. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps until you get to the bottom. But again, because it's got a longer access as well to accommodate, you can get in very easily. You got the 3-point locking system, same as the Lifesaver. It locks in the top and the bottom, and right here on the side. That's a FEMA guideline. Both the Refuge 8 and the Lifesaver 8 are both tested to withstand F5 tornado impact. They also meet or exceed all FEMA guidelines, the LS8 and the R8, this one here that we're looking at right now. As you can see down on the inside, there's plenty of room for 8 people. You can get easily 3 on both sides and 2 along the back. You can fit more people in there if you needed to. Both the Lifesaver and the Refuge are going to have that same handle. The Lifesaver is an aluminum handle. This is just more of a steel handle to get down into the shelter, but both of them are going to help you get in and out. And about the locking system, just to further clarify, FEMA requires you have a 3-point locking system on the inside of the storm shelter. So when you're down inside the shelter, you lock it, and it locks in 3 places along with the hinge to make sure that it is locked, sealed, and tight and not going to be able to open. Whereas if one point of the lock was to fail, you have 2 other points that it's locked and holding it down. That's why you have that in there. Both Lifesaver and the Refuge have that on the inside. The difference is the Refuge also has that same system where you can access from the outside. So again, quarter turn like that, and it locks in 3 points, which just means it'll keep it shut and you can lock it with a key. The Lifesaver, again, does not have this on the outside. You can only access that 3-point locking system from the inside. If you want to keep it shut from the outside, you would need to lock the handle down there through the pipe and run a chain through it manually in order to get it to lock. So you can lock the Lifesaver from the outside. It just doesn't come with it with a key like this one does built in. To get into the shelter when a storm shelter when a tornado comes through. Again, just to kind of here we are at the Lifesaver. This is a 12-person Lifesaver LS12 storm shelter. Just want to show you the locking system again. Here's the handle that you can use to lift and lower the lid, but as you can see, it's not locked. There's no way to actually lock it so that it shuts closed like you can with the Refuge. However, with this pipe right here, you can feed a chain through here, like a bicycle lock or something like that, or just a chain, and put a lock around it and manually lock it, just basically secure it and tie it down, and that will keep anybody from being able to open it. It's going to stay shut. It has the gasket on there so that it's going to stay shut, generally unless maybe a big gust of wind were to come through and open it. So it's not something you have to worry about unless you have kids or you just want to keep people out of it from, if you have like in the front yard, or if you don't have a fenced-in yard, you may want to keep it secure to keep people out of it from living in there or stuff like that. But just to kind of show you the difference in between the Lifesaver and the Refuge. Another thing while we're here at the Lifesaver as well, let's go back to the venting system. The Lifesaver, all of them are going to have the venting system, which is underneath the lid. You can see the lid is actually oversized to go over the top of the vents so that you can allow the air can cross-ventilate throughout the shelter. It can go through on both sides, so it keeps the strong force of the winds from blowing through and howling through the shelter, but it still allows fresh ventilation to go through while still keeping out the insects, the pests, and the water. So that's, again, going to be one of your big differences.